Dear students, again you are most welcome to my lesson or lecture for the subject of accounting, first paper. This class is applicable for 11 business studies students, the English medium students. But this class is also applicable for class 9 business studies and 10 business studies. Now, this is the third lecture for accounts part for the chapter 1, and this is the lecture number 7 for the chapter 1. I have already given the 2 lectures for the part of accounts with a creative question. Today, I will also solve a new creative question for the part of accounts. Dear learners, at first you have to write the new creative question for the part of accounts. You are watching in my slide and the new creative question. You have to write in a hurry in your accounting practice copy. Please write down. The following transactions occurred in business of Athene traders as on January 2020. January 1, started business with cash 1,70,000, bank balance 1,30,000 and 2 laptop values of Taka 75,000 par. January 3, deposited into bank. January 4, an old desktop computer purchased, values of Taka 15,000. January 7, paper, pen and ink purchased in cash Taka 3,000. January 8, laptop purchased from IT World, values of Taka 75,000. January 15, paid for publicity Taka 5,000. January 24, receipt from customer for repair Taka 18,000. January 31, shop brand paid by check Taka 5,000. From the above transactions or above stem, you have to solve the 3 requirements. Requirement A, determine the amount of opening capital. Requirement B, determine the debit and credit from the transactions January 4, 8, 24 and 30. But I will discuss the overall total questions, total transactions. Requirement C, show the classification of accounts with reason for January 1, 3, 7 and 15. Again, I am saying that overall classification of accounts will discuss for overall questions. Dear learners, the chapter is account, but requirement another requirement is ready for determining debit and credit. We have observed debit and credit, these 2 words, in both T table and moving balance table. Account is not possible to prepare without identifying debit and credit. So, part of this lesson is explained with the principle of identifying debit and credit of different types of accounts. We have learned in double entry system chapter that each transaction brings 2 equal opposite changes. One change is debit and other one is credit. At least 2 accounts are affected by each transaction. One is debit and other is credit. Dear learners, summary of calculation of debit and credit. When asset increases, then it is debited, but when asset is decreases, then it is credited. And liability decreases debit, but liability increases credit. When equity decreases, then it is debited, but when equity increases, then it is credited. Same for rules for revenue. Revenue decreasing is debit and revenue increasing is credit, but opposite of expenses. Expenses when increase, then it is debited, and expense when decrease, then it is credited. Just for determining the debit and credit. And for classification of accounts, as capital, that is equity, drawings equity, cash asset, bank asset, purchase expense, sales revenues, furniture assets, plant and machinery assets, return outward expenses, but it is contra expenses, return inwards revenue, that is contra revenue, creditors or accounts payable liability, debtors or accounts receivable asset, bills payable liability, bills receivable asset, loan liability, investment asset, salary account, that is expense, stationery expenses, rent expense, commission expense, discount expense, that is discount allowed, carries expenses, interest expense, advertisement expense, bad debt expense, depreciation expense, expense due liability, income receivable or due income asset, prepaid expenses asset, unearned income, that is liability, repair expenses, office equipment, machinery, furniture, land and building, delivery van, asset, goodwill, patent, trademark, copyright, that is asset item. Dear learners, I have already said about the different types of account for the classification. So you are watching in my slide the first creative question for the second creative question for accounts section. The first requirement is determine the amount of opening capital. When the business started with the amount of asset, property or any other things, then it is related to opening capital or beginning capital or initial capital of any business. So in this business, that is path in traders, the amount of opening capital would be cash for taka 1,70,000 and bank balance taka 1,30,000 and laptop balance, 2 laptop balance, that is 75,000 into 2, total amount of laptop balance 1,50,000. So total amount of opening capital or beginning capital or initial capital in this math, 1,70,000 plus 1,30,000 plus 1,50,000. Total of opening capital is 4,50,000. This answer is for requirement A. Requirement B, determine the debit and credit. I've already just discussed about the rules for determining debit and credit. So from the first one, January 1, started business with cash, bank balance and 2 laptop values. 3 assets are related there, but when they started business, then it's related to another account, that is capital. So for the first transaction, debit get determining the cash account debit, bank account debit, office equipment account debit and capital account credit. Repeat again: cash account debit, bank account debit, office equipment account debit, capital account credit. Dear students, when the asset increases, then it is debited, and when equity increases, then it is credited. So all assets are debited and equity is credited for the amount of capital. January 3, deposited into bank. When any amount of cash deposited into bank, it's related to accounts, bank account and cash account. But at this time, bank balance is increased and cash balance is decreased. So bank balance is one kind of asset, and cash balance is also for asset. So when bank increase, then bank account debit, and when cash decrease, then cash account credit. So in this transaction, bank account debit and cash account is credit. Dear learners, I think you are understanding. I discussed regarding this question. January 4, an old desktop computer purchased of Taka 15,000. And any kind of desktop or laptop computer is related to office equipment, or any kind of electronics or electrical item and purchased or used or acquired, then it is related to office equipment. So for this transaction, office equipment account is debited and cash account is credited. Because cash has gone from business, so cash decreased, that is cash account credit, and office equipment account is debited. January 7, paper, pen and ink purchased in cash. Paper, pen and ink is related to stationery of any business. So when stationery increase, that is expenses increase. And when any things is purchased in cash, then cash has gone from the business. So for increasing the expenses for stationery account or stationery expense is debit and cash account is credit for this transaction. January 8, laptop purchased from IT World, values of Taka 75,000. Another laptop purchased from IT World. Any kind of laptop or desktop purchased, then it is related to office equipment. So for laptop purchasing, office equipment is debited, but credit is what? Is written from IT World values. So without information, and any kind of person or institution is related to purchase or sold, then it's already indicated an on credit transaction. So IT World, that is equipment supplier, that is creditors or accounts payable, but in this label you have to write equipment suppliers, that is IT World. So for this transaction you have to write office equipment account debit, equipment suppliers, that is IT World credit. I repeat again, office equipment debit, equipment suppliers, that is IT World credit. Okay, now you can go January 15, paid for publicity. Publicity, that is for advertisement. So paying amount for cash decreasing, so advertisement expense is debited and cash account is credited. January 24, receipt from customer for repair. Receipt from customer for repair. You are seeing this business is related to service related firm, that is repair service firm. So any amount received for repair, that is one kind of revenue, and received is what? Is cash. cash is in the business, so cash account is debited for this entry and repair service revenue is credited. Source of revenue for this business, so you can write cash account debit and repair service revenue is credit. January 31, shop rent paid by check. Shop rent one kind of expenses and paid by check, that is bank balance is decreased, so rent expense is debit and bank account is credit. Dear learners, that's all for debit and credit determining. But in this part, for our main requirement, classification of account from beginning to ending transactions, just I am discussing about the classification: cash, bank, office equipment, asset, capital, equity, stationary expenses, equipment supplier liability, advertisement expense, repair service revenue, rent expense. Dear learners, now you can ready to write the solution of this creative question. The first requirement: the amount of opening capital is determined below. Total 4 columns are available: date, particulars, amount, taka, detail, total. 2019 not 2017, January 1, cash 1,70,000, bank balance 1,30,000, office equipment 75,000 into 2, that is 1,50,000. Total amount of opening capital taka 4,50,000. Dear learners, I think you have already taken or written in your accounting practice copy the requirement A. Now you can draw another format for determining debit and credit. Only 4 transactions for indication for determining debit and credit, but I have already discussed the all transactions for determining and debit and credit. I think you have understood from my discussing topics. Now you can go for requirement B. Let us see. Determine the debit and credit using following format. Totally 4 columns are available for determining debit and credit: date, accounts title, debit taka, credit taka. Only 4 transactions are indicated. January 4, office equipment account debit, cash account credit. Old desktop computer purchase, that is office equipment account debit, cash account credit. January 8, office equipment account debit, equipment suppliers, that is IT World credit. Another laptop purchased from IT World, so office equipment account debit, equipment supplier, that is IT World credit. January 24, cash account debit, repair service revenue account credit. For receiving amount, the amount for repair, so cash account is debited and service revenue account, that is repair service revenue account, is credited. January 30, rent expense debit and bank account credit. For paying shop rent by check, so rent expense debit, bank account credit. Now you can go for writing requirement C. Only 4 transactions are indicated for classification of account: January 1, January 3, January 7, and January 15. In this format, 4 columns are available: date, related accounts, classification of account, reason. Okay, January 1, started business with cash, bank balance, and laptop. Totally 4 accounts are related in this transaction: cash, bank, office equipment, capital. Now classification of account: cash, one kind of asset, bank asset, office equipment asset, capital equity. All items are increasing, so reason is increase, 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 and increase. January 3, deposited into bank. This transaction, 2 accounts are involved: bank and cash. Bank increasing, that is asset increasing, and cash decreasing, that is asset decreased. January 7, paper, pen, and ink purchased. In this transaction, 2 accounts are involved: stationery expense and cash. You know, stationery, one kind of expenses for classification of account, and reason increasing of expenses. Cash, one kind of asset. Cash has gone from business, so reason is decrease. January 15, paid for publicity, that is one kind of expenses, that is advertisement expenses. So advertisement is expenses and increasing expenses. Cash has gone from business, so classification of account is asset, that decreasing. Dear students, today's home assignment, you can write create question number. That is your accounting learning workbook, level 1. From accounts part, create question number 3, 6, 8, and 10. Okay, dear students, follow my special instruction and write in your copy with correct answer. I hope you have already understood my space regarding the part of accounts, that is this chapter 1. Okay, thank you very much, my dear students. That's all for being today. Allah Hafiz.